Hey guys, welcome back to my study diaries, and today I am back with yet another video about study tips and hacks. With the whole change in exam pattern and us going to have so many exams and maybe a few more pre-boards and all, I just wanted to share some tips that I use to score 90% and above in most of my exams, and I hope this will help you. So before we begin, I wanted to say that these tips may or may not work for you. It is something that worked personally for me, and I've been following this probably since 8th grade when I first found out which study method worked for me. So that's since when I've been using these tips, and it might work for you, it might not. So do let me know in the comments down below what study tips works for you, so that others might also be able to use those study tips as well. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started with the first tip, and that is reading NCERT. If you guys are 9th graders here, and if you have seen my 9th grade study tip video, you would have seen and known how much I emphasized on reading NCERT. I clearly remember that I've mentioned a tip called NCERT is key, and yes, I still initially, like when I first got an idea, I never knew there was something called like guidebooks and reference books in 8th grade. I had no idea things like that existed. But then even after I knew them, I was like, I got overwhelmed. I didn't know what to buy. People used to read books from the library and all those extra books and all, and I used to get really confused because some have a lot of higher information, some have are more on a shallow based information level. So that's when I understood that NCERT is the most important, and its information is very important, even the dates and all. So just go read NCERT. And many people skip reading NCERT before exams, but what I do is the day before exam I would just read NCERT again and again and again. And yes, that's one of the best tips I would give you for scoring well. So make sure to write down and jot down the first tip and the most important tip, that is reading NCERT. Now moving on to the second tip, which is study with a timer. And usually I never studied with a timer till probably say 9th grade or mid of 9th grade. And then I got to know about many people studying with a timer in their table, or just like studying with time, and I was like, why do even people use a timer if you can just study on your own without it? But then after I started using a timer while studying, it really made a lot of difference, and I'll explain it to you right now. The first thing I noticed when you study with a timer, or just keep wear a watch in your hand, or keep a small table clock when you're studying, is that it makes you conscious of how you are spending your time. It makes you aware that if you're not doing anything properly, then you feel like, oh my god, I'm losing this time which I could have used for something more productive. Also, it helps you to stay more focused on what you're doing, because the time is ticking and you don't have enough time left. That's what helps me. And remember guys, time is the wisest counselor of all. So that's it for the second tip. Hope you noted it down. Now moving on to the third tip is goal-based study, not time-based study. Now I get asked a lot, how long do you study? How many hours did you study? And I would say that time-based study is not something I follow, especially recently since 9th grade. I do not study by time, rather I study based on goals. Now, for example, I say that on one day I plan to study for 3 hours. Okay, for example, I say I plan to study for 3 hours. And when I study for that 3 hours, and with the end of 3 hours, when my alarm clock goes off, then I'm going to be like, okay, I'm done with my studies. Even if I'm half finished, or even if I haven't completed the chapter which I had planned to do, I would have just stopped studying because I'm done with my time for 3 hours of study. But I would say that that isn't the best method, or it may not be the best method for you guys, because this is what I feel. You guys might feel differently about this. But this is something I felt a lot in 9th grade also, since that's when I was, really figuring out how I'm supposed to study. Now, if I had studied based on goals, suppose I planned to complete the chapter Dust of Snow and Fire and Ice on one particular day, then, even if I study for 2 hours, even if I study for 1 hour, even if I study for 5 hours, I need to get those two work complete. And if I do them, then I'm free for the rest of the day. So, but even if you had completed it early, then you can, go on with the next chapter that you had planned. So focus on goal-based study and not time-based study. Moving on to the fourth tip, guys, is know your study mode. Now, this is what I was talking about, because I had no idea how I'm supposed to study, what strategy I'm supposed to use. Because even in 8th grade, though I did get good marks, I was still an average student. Okay, I never, I would get marks, but less than what I had expected, and that was very disappointing for me. And this is the reason, like, even if we feel that we've studied a lot, it's important to know if we've studied according to how we are able to understand things. Now, what do I mean by the study mode? For example, some of you might be visual learners. You would learn better by looking at diagrams or looking at, animated videos. For example, in science, if I'm talking about the chapter nutrition, you would learn better by, looking at the diagram of the digestive system, or by looking at some videos that show the animation of how food is getting digested and how nutrition takes place in our body. Many of you might, learn better when you're hearing things. For example, if you are good, in learning when hearing things, you might listen to many lectures in class, and you might, read the textbook out loud, so that hearing keeps on going. Now, and many of you might be verbal learners. You might, so in case you're having a doubt in a concept, you might explain it to yourself. And, those are some ways in which you can find out your study mode. So find what works for you the best, because self-discovery is, the best important thing that you can do while studying. Discover more about how you're able to learn, how easily you're able to learn, and gain knowledge about yourself before we gain knowledge about the subject, and that will help us be efficient and better in learning. The next tip is distractions away. Yes, I have so many distractions. If I had to make a list, that list would be never ending, like a Christmas list for Santa Claus. It is that big. I have so many distractions. And even for you, your distractions might be your siblings. They might come and annoy you, in my case. Or sometimes, when we keep a phone in the same room or on the table, you might, feel like, oh, I'm just done with one, chapter, let me just go through the phone, and then we'll just get stuck with it, and we would never be able to get out of that whole phone addiction fantasy thing. And another personal addiction I had was reading books, and many of you guys might think that's not bad at all. And yeah, obviously it's not bad. Reading is like amazing, and it just transports you to a whole new wonderful world, and I just love that. And many of you probably know that I'm a huge Potterhead. I've read the Percy Jackson series, Divergent, so many. But then when I get into books, I'm not able to stop reading. And I usually stop reading books, or I avoid reading books before a week before exam, so that I'm not only thinking about what's happening in the story, and I kind of focus on my studies as well. The last tip, that is believe in yourself, might seem pretty straightforward, but actually it is very important. I used to always fear that, oh my god, I think I didn't study much and probably I'll get below 80% or something. But then only when you start believing in yourself, and when you feel that yes, even I can succeed like the toppers in class. We usually think that, oh, it's just the toppers who can get score good marks and all, but that's not true. You have that within you. You have the power within you to succeed as well. So just don't compare yourself with others, and be yourself and believe in yourself, because that is our biggest motivation. When we know that we are capable of doing it, no one can stop us, and no one can, stop us from achieving our goals. So believe in yourself, and the moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it. So make sure to have self-confidence.